but very rewarding, and did a lot of hard work there. So those are the awards that kind of matter most to me.
Are there any significant events that you remember, not with an award?
There was a kid when I was in Iraq the first time who was real sick, and he had an iron deficiency that was really debilitating, and he needed some medication that was pretty easy to get here, but we couldn't get it there. And you look at a lot of these countries that are kind of underdeveloped or under-resourced, funded, whatever, corruption. And so he couldn't get the medication, and his parents couldn't work it out. And I reached back to some people that I knew here, and this was in '03, and said, is there anybody out there who knows somebody at this company that could send some of this stuff to me? And there were a number of people that, I know somebody there, but we can't, and there's this regulation and whatever. And then there was this one guy who was just the kind of person that, I see a problem, let's solve it. And next thing I knew, I had 2 boxes of that medication sent to me. And I was able to bring it to this family. And, they didn't have anything, but that kid was going to die. And so I was able to, bring that medication to them, and I never really saw them much after that. I understood that became actually kind of a liability for them, because this medication showing up for the child, there were other elements within the society there that said, if you got that medication, you must have done something for the Americans. So maybe you're not so on side with, the people who are resisting the Americans, and I think that might have caused them some problems. But it helped the child at the time, and I was not so proud of what I did. I was proud of the gentleman that I know back here in the States, who just kind of said, I don't care what the hurdles are, I'm going to work it out and get that sent over and see if I can, take part in a solution. That was something I was real proud of. There was a MedCap, or a medical capabilities kind of exercise when I was in Kosovo. And there was a dentist in the American system, and he had a bunch of fillings. And according to American standards, these fillings, I guess, had gone bad. So you couldn't put them in an American mouth. So but he said, but really there's nothing wrong with them. So I went down to, so we were at this MedCap, and I kind of kept them in the truck that I had. I figured, this is probably the place where I could find someone who could use these things. So we're there, and this guy comes up, and he's got all kinds of abdominal issues, and it comes out through the interpreter that I had that he couldn't get, he was kind of down on his luck sort of guy, and he didn't have any dentures. And so he had to basically swallow all of his food, having, kind of given it his best effort to chew it. And so that wrought a lot of hell against his digestive system, and over the years it had caused him a lot of problems, and it was just getting worse and worse. So I got him over to the dentist and basically said, it was a horse trade, I've got all these fillings that I'm sure you could use and help people in there, but here's the bargain. You get all the fillings, but you need to make him as, whatever payment or, quid pro quo, you're going to hook him up with some dentures. And he agreed to do that, and it was all good. And it was the kind of thing where I said, I made them discuss it and agree to it and do their own little Serbian handshake deal so the guy couldn't back out of it. Mm-hmm. And I gave him the stuff, and that was it. So, weird little victories like that are nice. When I was in Iraq, we were out on a patrol, and we were out just kind of meeting people, and the security element that I had assigned to me that day was from a unit called 2-3 Field Artillery, and there was a guy that came up, and basically he had been a bomber, and the guys that were in the security detail recognized him. So we grabbed him and spoke with him some, and it turned out later that day that he was in fact this guy that had been responsible for a bombing in that area that had killed some civilians, and so that was nice, and we kind of stumbled into that. There was a gentleman one night when we come back, I was bringing our brigade commander back from doing a radio show, and it was pretty late. And so we had gates on either side of this place called the Martyrs Monument where we lived. And there was a guy at the gate, and everyone was kind of like, it's late. There were always lots of people coming to the gates. And early on in the conflict, everybody had information. Everybody knew where Saddam was. A lot of times the information you really had to use your screens to figure out, is this person credible or not? Or is it a crazy guy? Is it somebody who's trying to settle a score with someone they don't like in their neighborhood? Are they trying to bring the U.S. Army into settling some sort of tribal beef? And that was, something you just had to be careful, because you could find yourself at the wrong end of a bad situation, and you were kind of manipulated into it. So the commander stopped the vehicle and said, what's with that guy? And I said, oh, sir, he came up and he was asking these things, blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, he's like, well, we're going to keep going. And I said, you know what, let me get out, I'll talk to him. So I jump out with my interpreter, and we start talking to this guy, and he's telling us that he knows where there's weapons of mass destruction. And that's how it's coming out in the translation. And then we start talking with him some more, and he starts to calm down, and we finally pick up, and again, this goes to having a quality interpreter. And he says basically that he's talking WMD because he wants you to get him inside the building. So we bring him into the building. We go in and start talking. Well, he doesn't know anything about WMD. What he wants to tell us about is that he has a brother who's kind of a half-wit, but he's got this great skill when it comes to electronics. And he's being pushed on pretty heavily, not electronics, but electrical devices, which they're a big piece of a lot of these improvised explosive devices. So we talk with him some more, and we find out that his brother is being manipulated, coerced, whatever, to work out detonators for some of these IEDs. And he doesn't want to be helping them, but he doesn't know what else to do, because if you don't help them, you die. So, you have to appreciate the really lousy situation that a lot of folks are in. They're unwitting or unwilling participants, but hey, I want to live. So we got his story, and then, it all looked and smelled right. So we brought in the human intelligence team, and I basically just handed him off to them and say, I've spoken with him. Here's what he's saying. This is now becoming kind of a kinetic activity, meaning, guys with guns are going to go and solve this issue for him. It's not something for me anymore. So, I've developed it enough to where I can go to this warrant officer who works the human intelligence side and say, I've spoken with him, it looks and it sounds and it smells right, make the introduction, and then I was out of it. Well, the next day, it continued to go well, and it developed into something actionable. And so that next day, this gentleman was supposed to hand off some of these things he was supposed to make to these guys that were coming from Fallujah. And when they showed up, they had a team of Americans that were there and arrested, did their thing, and took that guy into custody as part of like the whole roundup. But then basically he got spit out the other end as an unwitting participant. His brother basically, because his brother was also concerned that eventually the Americans are going to get wind of what's going on. There's going to be a gunfight, and he's going to get killed because he will be, one of them. And he didn't want that either. So this allowed him to get his brother extricated from a bad situation. Bad guys get caught. No more bombs, at least for a while. And that was good. So I took a measure of pride that in that moment when I could have just driven past, that we stopped and talked to the guy and figured out that it was credible, and were able to address his concerns, and it ended well.